In 1968, my grandfather, Robert Doolittle, left his dairy farm in Wisconsin to follow the Lord's calling to be a missionary in Brazil. Grandpa began a pioneer mission work and faithfully labored in Brazil for over 40 years. The Lord blessed, and many churches were planted, and many souls were saved. One of the men who was saved and discipled through the ministry of my grandpa was Pastor Anselmo, who still is faithfully serving the Lord as a national pastor in Brazil. It was through the determined witnessing and preaching of the gospel by Pastor Anselmo that a young man, Antonio Duarte, was saved in 1976. That young man was my father, and several years later he would marry Robert Doolittle's oldest daughter, Lawanda. The Lord used my dad to plant 4 churches in Brazil, one of which currently he is pastoring. When I was 5 years old, my father preached a message on the reality of hell, and I realized that just because my dad was a pastor, that did not make me saved. That night, I trusted Christ as my Savior.
I was born in Kenya, East Africa, while my parents were serving as missionaries there. At the age of 4, I accepted Jesus as my Savior when I realized I was a sinner and that Jesus had paid the price for my sin by dying on the cross. During my high school years, I had no idea what the Lord wanted me to do in the future, but I was surrendered to do whatever He had planned. A few days after I turned 18, I fell 35.5 feet from a deer stand. God not only chose to miraculously spare my life, but also restored me to near perfect health. He used that accident in my life, prayer, and Bible reading to clearly show me He wanted me to be a missionary overseas. 2 years later, I traveled to the Amazon region of Brazil and spent 6 months helping some veteran missionaries on the island of Urucurituba. The Lord used that time in the Amazon to open my eyes to the millions of lost souls in Brazil.
When I was 14, I surrendered my life to full-time Christian service at a youth camp in Brazil. But as I grew older, my focus was turned away from God toward soccer. My parents told me that before I followed my dreams, I had to go to a Bible college for 1 year. After attending 1 semester at Ambassador Baptist College, evangelist Dwight Smith preached a message at my home church. And that night, I finally surrendered to do whatever the Lord wanted with my life. I knew that He had called me to preach the gospel. While at Ambassador, I met the love of my life, Gloria. The Lord led us together, and after we both graduated, we were married in April of 2016. God has now blessed us with a baby girl, Eliana. The Lord has called us back to Brazil. We are set out of Maranatha Baptist Church in Shelby, North Carolina, with worldwide New Testament Baptist missions.
My name is Jim Davidson, and I'm the pastor of Maranatha Baptist Church in Shelby, North Carolina. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Jed and Gloria Duarte, a young couple that has been faithfully serving the Lord in our local church, and now have a great burden and passion to reach lost souls for Christ in Brazil. Jed grew up in Brazil, and Gloria spent time there before they were married as a single missionary woman. I had the distinct pleasure of accompanying them on their survey trip to the city where God has called them, Alta Floresta, a city that is filled to the brim with religion, but has no true gospel witness, no beacon of light or of hope. To see with what ease they were able to communicate and reach out to those that were there was a great source of encouragement to me. It's my hope that you will prayerfully consider partnering with them as they labor in Brazil to plant churches and to reach lost souls for Christ.
Most people don't realize that Brazil is about the same size as continental U.S., with over 210 million souls. Through the years, many missionaries have faithfully labored in the larger coastal cities. However, vast areas with hundreds of towns and cities have yet to be reached with the glorious gospel of Jesus Christ. We plan on representing you in planting a church in the needy town of Alta Floresta. From there, we plan on branching out to the surrounding towns and cities with the long-term goal of planting a church in each of them and turning those churches over to a national pastor.
Some of the avenues we plan on using to reach out to the lost in Brazil will include vacation Bible schools, sports camps, youth rallies, and a radio ministry. Our heart's burden is particularly for the youth in Brazil. We want to teach them that they do not have to repeat the sin cycle of their parents and grandparents, but through the power of Christ can live a life victorious in Him. We are excited to see the power of the gospel transform lives in Brazil.
Christ has commanded us to go into all the world and to preach the gospel to every creature. These people in these towns, however, have not yet been reached. Therefore, we must go, lest they die in their sin and go to a Christless and hopeless eternity. During our survey trip in August of 2017, our eyes truly affected our heart as we saw the need for the gospel in Brazil. As we go to the heart of Brazil, would you pray that God would use us to reach the unreached?
That He would bring hope to the hopeless and light to the blinded eyes?
Would you prayerfully consider partnering with us to fulfill the Great Commission in the heart of Brazil?